I think before going further into the debate, what we need to analyze is the real meaning of this phrase, aspirations of the youth. Now, Ashwin has been talking about the least common denominators, but let's face it, I mean, employability for you and me may not mean the same thing as employability for the chotu at the nearest dhaba. And so basically what we need to understand is that the youth is not this homogeneous, monolithic block, and there's no common, unified list of aspirations which we can, work on and then go after the political class with that. There is, in fact, a diversity within the youth. The youth form different parts. The youth come from different sections of the society. And therefore, there is also a heterogeneity of aspirations. And these aspirations are something that we are often not ready to understand. I mean, for example, we all get very irritated by these, trouble-making tribals in Odisha who are not allowing Vedanta to mine for bauxite in the Niyamgiri hills. What we do not understand is that they've been living there for hundreds of years and they have their own very genuine aspirations with regard to what should happen in those hills, with regard to any mining that should happen in those hills. Or, for instance, how the entire issue of Jal Jangal Jameen, the assertion of rights by the youth belonging to rural and tribal areas is something that we are very disconnected with and that we don't tend to understand. And I mean, look at the treatment we give to the northeastern youth. I mean, how many of us are concerned that Irom Sharmila is going to complete 13 years of hunger in a simple aspiration for justice? And for that matter, let's look at how we ignore the fear of racial profiling that Muslim youths feel today. I mean, the very fact that me, a very mainstream, middle-class Muslim youth, my parents don't allow me to travel on a national holiday because they're afraid something bad might happen to me because of my Muslim name. So these are things that the problem of aspirations, the frustration of aspirations, is something that has a lot to do with the social incoherence which is present before us today. The gap of understanding between different sections of the society and therefore between different sections of the youth. I mean, apart from a very elite class, how many people celebrate festivals together today? Why is this greater ghettoization between different communities? So this is leading to a very incoherent social functioning, which is that this social crisis is spilling over into the political scenario. And here I would like to say we are making a very, very big mistake by drawing this sharp differentiation between the political class and everybody else, between the political class and the youth. Because why do we not own up? Why do we not realize that we are all part of the politics? I mean, we have Professor Yogendra Yadav here. You just called him, now he's part of the political class. It's not as if suddenly Professor Yadav one day decided that I want to become a politician. The fact of the matter is, throughout his life, his entire academics, his entire civil activism has been geared towards a certain kind of politics. Similarly, the activities of an NGO or a human rights organization, or for that matter, a corporate firm, are all geared towards a certain kind of politics. Why do we not realize that? Why do we tend to disassociate ourselves from the political class and say these are some sort of an alien entity who've been installed before us? The apathy in the youth, the way student unions have become irrelevant, the way we refuse to come to the streets for something that we believe in, is something that is most appalling and most dangerous. I mean, the recent case of the Delhi gang rape and the way students got involved is a very rare example of how we get up for something that we truly believe in. And that is something that we need to look for. That is something we need to start owning up, taking responsibility, and start saying that the political class is all of us. We live in a democracy, and it's the job of all of us to not just choose people who will be connectors between power and people and power, yes, but to become the connect between people and power. That's all I have to say for now.
Fawaz, well argued. You make a point here, and I want Kiran Bedi, who's going to be our next speaker, to respond to that point, that the point that you make is very interestingly articulated. What you're saying is that politicians are only the symptom of the social malaise at best, and therefore you make a very controversial point, Fawaz, and I like controversy. You are making a point that politicians are the favorite whipping boys, but they don't deserve it.
Politician syndrome.
Have I understood you correctly?
Yeah, I am highlighting the blame the politician syndrome we tend to have.
I think it's just the right point in this debate to throw the floor to our third speaker speaking for the motion, Dr. Kiran Bedi. You have 3 minutes to argue back.
If I would take his 3 points while he spoke were, number one, that there is no common aspiration as far as quality of life is concerned. To my mind, quality of life is a common aspiration. The pattern may change. The extent may change. It may have that kind of variety, but the quality of life, basic quality of life, I think is everyone's aspiration. Number one. This is my first rebuttal. My second rebuttal would be, he talked about the jungle, jal, jungle and zameen. This is exactly what has been bled by the politicians. It's been bled. Jal has been bled, jungle has been bled, zameen has been bled. You've had politicians who've been encroaching on the land, and you've had politicians who've been bleeding it by emptying the exchequer. Otherwise, you would not have had those hundreds of those districts in Nakshal areas. And this has happened over the years. And the ball, therefore, is in. This is exactly what has been caused by the politicians. And third, it is the same political class which is the bleeding which has been actually pleading class. So they are actually a BPL class which has been bleeding the exchequer, Jal, jungle and zameen. They've been pleading to lead. It's pleading to lead. It's a BPL class which has been bleeding, which has been pleading, and which has been wanting to lead. Now, where did it fail in leading, to my mind, is I'm a former public servant. They failed to lead even the public servants. While they're pleading to get the votes, they've failed miserably to lead the bureaucracy as well. Actually, they've abused the bureaucracy, like you've seen the fodder case. What has happened? It's a nexus between the politicians and the bureaucrats that you have been signing up all false bills. And that is why bureaucrats and politicians today are going to be convicted for many, many years, and they're already in jail. So therefore, I would say the politicians failed to lead either the people who they bled and who they pleaded for votes, as well as lead the bureaucracy who was accountable to them. So I would therefore rebut this, that the failure goes back to the politicians who bled, who pleaded, and who led miserably.
Kiran Bedi, thank you very much. Forceful argument as usual. She makes a case that this is the political class which has bled this country, and therefore the disaffection, I presume, which the youth experiences, or the disenchantment that they experience with the body politic, is because of their insensitivity. It's the right time to get in Congress Party's Sachin Pilot, who's the minister in the Manmohan Singh cabinet, to respond to the points that Kiran Bedi has made on the subject today. Against the motion, Sachin.
Well, first of all, I think it's the topic of discussion today is about the political class not living up to the expectations of young people in India. What this nation represents is much more than youth. There is multiple facets to our society. But just one point before I take on the main debating issues. Now, I respect Dr. Bedi very much, and I think she's very passionate when she makes certain statements. But oftentimes I've seen it is our officers and our bureaucrats and our officials who seem to find a voice little after they retire. But while they're working, I don't see the kind of response that should be coming from the people who are actually signing on files. And then when the day has gone by, it's easy to point fingers and find faults. But I think the ultimate responsibility lies with the political class. But the system comprises of more than just politicians. There are judicial officers, there are bureaucrats, there are police officials, there are administrations, there are a whole lot of stakeholders which ultimately reflect India's functionality. It's quite easy to blame politicians, as you said, Arnab, even though you said you're not biased, but I think your statements were quite clear that the ultimate buck stops with the politician. And I'm the last one to shrug responsibility. But I would like the House to consider the point that this nation is where it is today. And for all the ills that we can illustrate today and point fingers and find faults with the politicians, the last 6.5 decades have some glorious moments to it. The direction, the way the country has moved forward, the way we are today, the kinds of economic opportunity. Ashwin's point was primarily related to amount of economic opportunity our young people are able to get or not get today. Do not forget there are many countries around the world where there have been revolutions, there have been governments toppled, but our democracy, because of the thinking of our politicians, we may have difference of opinion. Me and Harsimrat have come from different political parties, but there are certain issues that are sacrosanct to our system. Our faith in a democracy, our faith in our system, however you may criticize it, ultimately for the kind of country that we live in, the scale, scope, depth, diversity, large nation that we are, the fact that we've kept ourselves together is because of the political leadership. This country would have collapsed 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But for all that we criticize our political class, me included, I think we have done a seminal job in keeping the lamp of democracy burning, the faith of people. Every 5 years they go out and vote and elect or re-elect or reject people. That system has sustained in the subcontinent only in India. Look around our neighborhood. There's not one single country that has the capacity to absorb the kind of aberration that we have in our system. So young people in India today have a voice. The fact that we're having a youth parliament today, 2013, didn't have this 25 years ago. It's because young people have found a voice. They have been able to come out and express themselves. Democracy is not about getting elected to positions of power. Democracy is about being involved in the process, asking questions, making people accountable, taking them to task. This sort of response, because of the technology, because of the awareness that we have today, has come because the country has moved forward. 25 years ago, India was not in a position to ask these tough questions. Today, the empowerment, the enlightenment, the awareness, the curiosity, the creativity, the imagination of young people has captured everyone. And I think we must pay a tribute to our young people. Politicians, of course, are a reflection of our society. No politician is imported from the moon. They're from the same gullies, same mohalla, same universities, and convicted or not convicted, these people get elected. Who elects them? We all elect them. So let's have a reflection within ourselves and see how we to improve our own societal values so that we get a much better political class. I'm an optimist. And I believe moving forward, if young people keep the faith, get good, educated, intelligent people with a lot of conviction and principles into the political mainstream, we will have an India that is truly worthy of being called a nation of the 21st century.
Sachin Pilot, let's give him a round of applause. Sachin Pilot says that India is much more than the youth, but the youth 35 and under is 51% of this country, Sachin. And if I were to look at your and Fayaz's arguments put together, I'm only placing it in context, I'm not getting into this debate, but if I take that argument, Fayaz, and what you said, it's interesting, and I want this side to actually think about it and respond. Because Fayaz says that almost everything which has gone wrong is a representative of a social malaise. So what's wrong is the responsibility of society. Sachin argues that everything that's held this country together is because of its politics. So everything that's good is because of its politics. So everything wrong, society, everything, or largely a lot of things good, politics, it's a controversial point, but the more controversial point is the direct charge you made at Kiran Bedi, indirectly saying that she said nothing when she was working, when she was part of the system, and that her own social awakening has happened post-retirement. She's not going to let go of that, I hope not, later on this debate, but we are going to move on for the moment. And just a reminder to all our participants and our audience, this is introductory comments. 4 have spoken, 4 more will speak after this, and after that we have open debate. In the middle of the open debate, we'll have our youth participants asking questions as well. We go back to the open debate. Kiran Bedi, you want to rebut, I know.
Quick, just one statement.
One second. Now, there are some rules. If he concedes, if this side concedes, do they concede to a 15-second interjection from Kiran Bedi?
Yes, I can.
You concede, that's right.
My book called It's Always Possible documents, and it was written while in service. A book called It's Always Possible documents the entire corruption which was happening in Tihar jail. My book called I Dare documents the entire criminalization of police, and the way policing was being failed is documented while in service. The government never came back to rebut it.
Right, okay. And that's when you were in service.